So with chapter 12, this is in regards to marriage and family. This is always a fun one, right? So what is family? It's a question. Seriously, what is family?
Family, your unit group. Yeah.
People that you built a bond with and are genetically related to.
Right? It's a family. It's your kineticness, right? It's people who you're related to by blood, marriage, or even adoption. So it's one of those things. Family it's universal.
Yes.
No.
Or
Yes.
universal, yes.
Yeah.
Like,
I like
yes.
the no.
Yes.
Yes, family is universal. Is marriage universal?
I would say yes.
Yeah, I think so.
You would think so, right? So, it's kind of one of those things. They're hard to explain, right? Family is universal. There's a variety of forms. We have families that could be heterosexual, homosexual, right? It doesn't matter what you are. It's related by marriage, blood, right? Adoption. Even you can even look at the aspects of foster kids. They're part of your family regardless. And right now is a foster awareness month. In regards to that aspects. So there's a variety of forms, but they're hard to define. Each family functions differently. So it's one of those things too where, yeah, you could say you're a tight-knit family and you kind of maybe get criticized from society-wise that you don't run your family as somebody else would, or how someone on the higher hierarchy of the social status says you should run your family. The only one that could tell you how to run your family is you, right? Or do we learn it from somewhere?
Yeah, from generations to generations.
Generations to generations, right? Culturally. It's type of a culture aspects. I run my family nothing like the way how I was raised, by the way. Total opposite, by the way. So I could ask you the same thing, what is marriage? Same thing, hard to define. Marriage is one of those things to where it's very hard to define in some religions, some cultures. Some only recognize the same-sex marriages. Some regulate, the proper sexual relationships. Universal properties. Yeah, there's universal properties, but it really depends in regards to what type of relationship that you are in. Are you in more of a polygamy, or are you more in a what's the other word I'm looking for? I can't think the word I'm looking for. Sorry, guys. But a polygamy is marrying to one or more.
Polyandry, maybe?
Polyandry is a woman married to more than one man. That's one you never hear of. You never hear about that one. You never hear of a woman being married to more than one man. I'll spit that out. But yet you'll hear about men being married to more than one woman. But is it legal?
Not here.
Not here.
It's not legal anywhere.
Some places.
They recognize it as a marriage, but technically they're only married to one.
Yeah, because the other ones don't count, correct? Legally.
Legally, no, they don't count. So there's a legal binding, especially in the U.S., there's a legal binding document that you can only be married to one person, and that's the marriage certificate. Otherwise than that, if you decide that you want to have a marriage ritual type aspects of a ceremony, then you're living in more of a polygamy or a polyandry type aspects. Yeah, you have one that's
legal in different countries.
It's still legal in other countries, but still, once again, it's still only one marriage certificate.
Oh.
So if it's legal in other countries, only one marriage certificate. If that spouse or whatever, or both of them die, the rest of them get nothing, correct?
They recognize them as being married. Kind of like how the U.S. has a law, like if you live with somebody longer than 6 years, then technically you have that
common
law type aspects. But what legal bounds do you have?
None, really.
No, but if you've been with somebody for longer than 6 years, you have a common law type aspects, and then you consider you that technically you are married,
Yeah.
but you have zero bounds for any type of legal rights of like property wise.
Assets.
Mm-hmm.
And
Interesting.
that still applies for the people that do it outside of the country, correct?
If you think about it, if you have a more of a poly, because like I said, it's more of a polygamy that you end up outside of the country, where you have one man marrying more women. In reality, what rights do the women have in general?
I don't know, since it's outside of the country.
A lot of times women don't have any rights. They got to follow with whatever men want.
Mhm.
So
But
even if it's a country that they don't want to follow a polygamy aspects, the women have no right. So if the man wants to sleep around, even though he may be married and he wants to sleep around with somebody, he's more than welcome to. Women
no,
can.
but my question was that let's say he passed away, what happens to the property?
Bye. I'm sure the women still maintain it and hold it,
Okay,
but at the same time, they have no legal rights to it.
I see.
Just like with Nigerian men, they're allowed to have more than one woman, more than one wife, but yet it can't be the other way around. It's frowned upon. It's against the law the other way around.
Okay.
Wow.
So like I said, how often do you hear of a woman having more than one husband?
Never.
I've never. Yeah.
Never. Why is that?
Make it gross.
Exactly.
Like one is enough.
So,
It's bad
but
enough.
yeah,
I'm,
it's one of those things where it's a little crazy, right?
I just think it's bad enough that we're internal. So I'm like, no.
Yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things. So when you're talking about marriage and you're talking about family, you have like this nuclear circle aspects that is controlled. That nuclear is your tight fit, your main household,
Kids,
like
your
your
wife.
husband, your wife, your kids. When
Okay.
you go out, you're extended, and that's like your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents. So, but if you think about in regards to what marriage means and what family is, you have different levels of families in marriage.
Yes.
So, and your family orientation and your family perception, it all varies, and that's just why you really can't say it does have some universal properties, but you can't say it's universal through and through. But when it comes to the nuclear and the extended, yes, but not beyond that.
So
So
is the family of orientation, I saw that on the book right now.
Mhm.
Is that more like when you grow up with like friends type of thing?
Mhm.
And then you consider them your family?
Because you know how
Okay.
like sometimes like you have like your parents may have like their friends from high school that they've been like really
Yeah,
close
and you
friends
call them
with,
like
and you call
aunts
them
or
aunts and
uncles.
uncles. Yeah, we have friends that are in Texas. Their kids have never met my husband and I, but we've met the dad in person. We've known him for, we just did this calculation the other night. I think we've known him for like 14 years, 15
Wow.
years. Right, and we've only met him in person once. I haven't met his wife and I haven't met their kids, but their kids call my husband and I aunt and uncle.
Yeah.
They've never met us in person.
Hmm.
So it's just they feel so close to us because we talk so much through internet, and we play video games with their dad, and stuff like that. So you know it's even like one of those things. He's been out of town for the last 2 weeks, and his wife's sitting here messaging me through Facebook. And the kids are like, "Oh, tell Aunt Ricky hi." Tell the kids hi. But I know when their birthdays are. I know when their anniversaries are. It's kind of like one of those things to where it's like, yeah, they're part of family, and I make sure to wish them a happy birthday whenever their birthdays come around. So it's that, family orientation type aspects. And then sometimes if if a aunt and uncle takes in a kid and that kid no longer calls that individual aunt or uncle, it's now mom and dad. It's the same thing.
Mm.
So when we're looking at common culture themes, characteristics, traditional societies versus now that we're industrialized, kind of what happens. Traditional, what is the structure of marriage? It's extended marriage embeds spouse in a large kinship network, right? Now it's more of a nuclear. We bring our bonds together with fewer obligations with the spouse relatives. The function of marriage is obviously encompassing. Seeing the 6 functions listed underneath the functional perspectives, there is actually 6, and we'll get to them. They're more limited in regards to the functions and fulfilled by social institutions now, when we're looking at what is really the function, because now as we've been more industrialized, we hear on the social medias and stuff like that, like, if you're not married by this time, or what is it, the dating apps and stuff like that, the online dating stuff. It's one of those things to where it's like, okay, we've kind of lost the traditional aspects of that and kind of went more industrialized in regards to limiting our opportunities, I guess, because we're so in social. We prefer to keep to ourselves. When we look at the who holds authority, back in traditional societies, the authority was held by men. Now is more divided, it's equally. It's not so much, a dominance of just men anymore. How spouses at one time, most of one spouse, monogamy, right?
Mhm.
One spouse. Um, while some have several. That was traditional. It was more of an aspects. Now, when you look at polygamy type aspects, and you're looking at the aspects of who still does it. And a few semesters ago, I had a student's like, that doesn't exist anymore. There's a television show about it,
Mm.
you know, and it's like it still does exist. It's just not as a traditional type aspects anymore. Where now we're the more of the industrialized, more of the societies only recognize one spouse. So it's more of a common aspects. Who selects the spouse? Were traditional. It used to be the spouse, usually the father or the parents, not the spouse. Listen to me. Who usually selected the spouse was the parents, usually the father. Selected the spouse. I could not imagine my dad picking out my spouse. That'd be no, 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 no. He would pick somebody out just like him. No. And then when we're talking about industrialized, now individuals choose their own spouse. I mean, if you are married, could you imagine your parents picking out your spouse for you?
Mhm.
Imagine what you end up with.
I
Someone that
don't
looks
want to
just.
imagine that.
You would end up with somebody just like your dad, right? I'm like, no, because that's who they usually co-site, linger to more. Where does the couple usually live? Usually couples in the traditional aspects used to reside with the groom's family. This was less commonly with the bride's family, because it was a situation to where usually the spouse, the male that has asked for the female's hand, had to be able to support. That's reason why it was like the parents' aspects, or the parents' choice of selecting, was to make sure that they were able to take care of their kid or their daughter. So that's the reason why the couples usually resided with the groom's family, because at that time it was kind of like a transfer of property, if you really want to think about it. And now you have couples establishing a new home, which is a neo-local residence. And usually you have families or individuals, before they even get married, purchase a home before they even get married now. And they live within a cohabitation, which we get into all of that. So when we're talking about marriages and then common traditions and all of that aspects, we have an endogamy, this was on your last exam. Who remembers what it was?
Marrying within the same group.
Marrying within one's own group. So traditional aspects, right? And exogamy is the practices of marrying outside of one's group. So this is that establishing they choose for themselves now, that industrialization aspects. So it's the figure that usually comes across is from a male ancestor, so kinship, less commonly from a female ancestors. These are traditional aspects, right? Industrial figured from a male and female. it's equally now. How is in the inheritance figures? Back in the traditional systems, there was more of a rigid system of rules. Depending on what way it was, whether if it was a male ancestor or a female ancestor, that's where the rigid systems of rules kind of came into effect. Nowadays, it's highly individualistic. It kind of goes back and forth. A lot of families now have more or less the wills and all that for the inheritance aspects, and and when it came to the culture wise, when you start getting into the multiculturalism and multi race and ethnicity, that's where you kind of get that binary, the individualistic, because now you have the mixing, the multiculturalism aspects kind of coming into place in regards to what culture is going to take precedence. What one are you going to follow? Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw the little meme inside the book in regards to the shifting of landscaping in regards to the social media and dating. I had like them sitting at the computers. It's on page 385 if you guys want to know what it's on. It shows like the risk and rewards of online dating.
Oh yeah.
All right, so marriage and family in theoretical perspective, functional perspectives and dysfunctions. What's the function of a family? Why is it so universal? Does anybody know? It's to fulfill all our basic functions. It's what we need. We got to have somebody to support us. If we don't have somebody within our, in our mid, or not in our mid, but in our main circle, it's one of those aspects in regards to, if this person can't give us what we need, we have outward, and then it keeps branching out, right? But eventually you find that close-knit family that is universal, that functions with you pretty well, and that you know that you can always depend on, lean on, talk to, get the support you're looking for, whatever it may be. You always have that function of a family, right? What's a dysfunction of a family? How about incest? Would that be a dysfunction of a family?
Yeah, it will be something abnormal.
This would be like you marrying your brother or your sister. If you're a guy, you'd be marrying your sister or maybe your brother. I don't know. That's incest. That's incest taboo. When you're looking at those functions of that, where did the role confusion come in? Who lost that role to where it was like, okay, we could cross and become lovers versus brother and sister. You lose that function, right? So from a functionalist perspective and the incest taboo, it helps families to avoid that role confusion. Each person has a role. They have a function. If I'm a brother, I'm a brother. If I'm a sister, I'm a sister. If I'm a mom, I'm a mom. If I'm a dad, I'm a dad. Those roles are there for a reason. When it becomes a dysfunction, it becomes more of a conflict, is when you cross those lines. Okay, that's when that incest taboo comes in. And yes, I do believe you will see a picture towards the end. Isolation and emotional overload. If you don't have this bond with your family, the function kind of loses this disconnection, right? So you become more what? Distant, isolated, you're depressed, unhappy, sad, overwhelmed a lot of times because you don't know how to deal with, normal society wise. So the function you kind of lose. So it becomes more of a dysfunction at that point. When everything is working and everything's functioning together, you're not isolated. You're happy. You're out and about. You're in the community. You're communicating within your family. You're more alive. So that's more of like where the function and dysfunction kind of comes from. Struggles between husband and wives. Are you gonna have conflict?
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Let me ask someone behind me. Are we gonna have conflict? No. we do. Don't lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So I mean, you're gonna have the conflict, but how do you do the? How do you work through it? How do you work through the struggles? The changing the power between the relationships. Um, if you are in a relationship that doesn't know how to shift that power, you're going to have conflict. If you're in a relationship to where the man feel like he is the dominant one all the time and the woman's just supposed to follow, you're not going to have a marriage for very long unless if the woman is okay with it. But you're still going to have a conflict struggle going back and forth. It's going to happen regardless. So it's one of those situations to where it's there's going to be conflict. Um, it's a two-way street. It's not a one-way street, right? So, but when you're looking at it, and I chuckle and I laugh because every time I see this, and I remember when my kids were little, and I'm like, this is so true. Who makes the decisions at the home? The wife makes 43% of the decisions. If it's equally and the couples divide decisions equally, it's about 31. And the husband making more decisions is about 26%. And I laugh because I can sit here and ask every single one of you, when you were a kid, who did you ask?
My mom.
Mom.
Right?
And even if I asked my dad, he told me to go ask my mom.
So my kids started to do this lovely little thing. Well, mom said no, so I'm going to go ask
Yeah, that's good.
because dad doesn't pay attention. You like how I did that? Or dad's not going to ask mom if I asked her first, and then I'm going to get the yes from dad. And so it's one of those situations. But if you notice, it's always, mom, can I go here? Mom, can I do that? Mom, I need this sign. Mom, I need help. Mom. So it's kind of like one of those things. But why is it that way? Who's usually present in the home?
Mom.
The
Most
mom.
of the time, the mom.
Unless if you had an equal kind of job to where both of you are kind of gone at the same time, that's where that decisions equally kind of come in together. To where now the kids are seeing you at equal times. To be quite honest, my kids probably saw my husband more than they saw me. I did a lot of community when they were younger in regards for work and stuff like that. So it was one of those things to where, when it comes to those couples decisions on what family matters, it's usually the wife that makes the decisions and then just kind of go, by the way, this is what we're doing. I know I've done that a few times myself. So when you're looking at symbolic perspectives, genders, housework, and childcare, changes in traditional gender orientation, right? It's no longer the wife staying home to be the housewife, or to stay home and taking care of the kids. Now sometimes it's the dad staying home and being the husband wife, more or less, and taking care of the house, being a house dad. So it's kind of one of those things where that is changing from traditional aspects and the orientation of it. Paid work in the household. If I got paid for everything I did in my house, I would probably not have to work in my normal fields that I do work, and make the same amount of money. Hey, I'd be happy with that one. And then the more childcare, obviously, the more you're away from home, the more childcare you have to pay. And we'll go on through any one individual one of these in total hours versus gender and labor. So when you're looking at a two paycheck marriage, how do wives and husbands divide their responsibilities? If you're married, how do you divide your responsibilities? Do you divide the
Yes.
responsibilities?
Oh, yeah,
Some people do, some
absolutely.
people don't.
Look at the
Yeah.
graph.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Paid work is your purple. Housework is your aqua color blue there, and your childcare, right? This is as of 2008. They need to update the statistics because I would love to see the new ones. But as you can see, the hours worked by a female is only 24 hours a week. There's somebody like me who holds down basically two jobs. I'm working over 40 hours plus a week and still do everything else. I do get support from the one behind me. Um, just it takes a little nudge and a reminder like, hey, can you help me? But the the other household chores. We don't have little kids anymore. So that way we know we really don't have any little kids except for the ones that behind me right now. Saying that I want some. But otherwise than that, you can see the responsibility in regards to, you can see the responsibility, sorry. It's kind of divided in between the household and the child care. Reverse it. Good night. Reverse it. Look at the aspects of if the wife was doing more, could the men really handle only working 24 hours a week at a job and taking care of all the household items?
Nope.
No.
That was quick. Those are all your married couples, guys. You want to say hi?
Hi.
Say night night. Give me a kiss.
She's so cute.
Go on. So it's one of those things too where, who, and I always tease my husband about this, when it comes to multitasking, no offense, guys, none whatsoever for the ones that are in here. You guys can't multitask. Love you guys to death, but in all, men cannot. They say they can, and to be quite honest, I say I can. I know I can't do it to the full extent that I used to be able to. But when it comes to, as you guys could see, multitasking, it takes a lot of practice, I guess you could say. I mean, as a mom, I think it kind of, or as a woman, I think it just kind of comes within your genes.
Yeah.
Like
That's
you're expected to, so therefore figure it out and do it. Where I think for a male aspect, it's not one of those things that comes very naturally. So, like I said, no offense, guys, none whatsoever. You guys were, it's one of those aspects in regards to it. So, but when it comes to this and the childcare aspects, but say like this, like I said, 2008, it's been a while, it's been a minute, but if you change it to 2020, women are working more hours now. So what happens to the rest of these chores?
I think they
Yeah,
women
it's
still
his
do it.
responsibility.
House
Right.
gets neglected.
Children.
Something's got to give. You only have
Yeah.
so many hours in a day.
Mhm.
So do you take it out of the household chores or childcare?
A little bit of both, I guess.
Exactly. It takes away from a little bit of both because here's what happens. If I'm working 40 hours a week, I'm spending less time with my kids. So my kids now in daycare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking
So-
about little kids.
Well, even, ones that can stay home by themselves. I mean, you're still, you're not with them. I mean, I monitor. You call me when you get home.
Mhm.
I know you got off the bus at this time and it only takes this long to walk. And where's my phone call? I was like that with my kids.
Oh, yeah, me too.
And then when they started driving, I was even worse. Like,
Oh,
you
God.
said this is where you're going. You gave me the address. I Google mapped it, and you should be there already. Like, where you at? So they had to call me as soon as they got there. So it was like one of those things. Like, Mom, seriously, I just drove up into the driveway. Like, relax.
Wow.
Make sure you got there. Like,
Mhm.
you
Me
call me
too.
when you leave too. So it
I
was like
was-
one of those
yep.
things.
That's right.
I'm like, if you don't want to start calling me, I'll just put a tracker on your phone. But that was childcare, right? It's just me being a mom type aspects. I still monitor them anyways. But it's one of those things. It doesn't change a whole lot. But when we're looking at that cycle of things, who takes care of what and income wise and all of that aspects. I mean, it takes a toll. It takes when you're talking about a marriage, it's like I said, it's a give and take. It can't be just a one-way street type aspects. All right. So when we're looking at the family life cycles, love and courtship, and I had students like raise their hands with me inside class and go, "What's courtship?" I was like, "Okay." I know I'm a little old now when someone says that to me. If you guys don't know what courtship is, I'll give you a little bit of insight. It's when you're dating somebody and not like dating times now. You literally have somebody that goes with you and chaperones you. And the most that you do is a hold a hand. And that is it. Right?
Sometimes not even that.
Not even that. Don't even think about throwing your arm over at her in the movies. Not gonna happen. You might have that third person sitting right in the middle of you.
Right.
That's the courtship aspects, right? Um, that's old school. That's traditional old school.
Mhm.
But if you think, what was their love? What was their perspective of family cycles? What was their family life like? What was their marriage life like? What was their thought process in regards to who has the decisions to do what? When you think about it that way, yeah, the marriage, the family aspects had a really tight bond, but there's something that was missing on the other side of that now that we've traditionalized or industrialized in regards to that. Where women now have a little bit more say in regards to what's going on.
Oh.
So marriage and family, or marriage, childbirth, child rearing, and family transitions. So when we're looking at, like I said, courtship, love is an addiction, if you think about it. And I say that as a smirk. Uh, it is an addiction. It should be an addiction. It should be somebody that you want to be around.
Mhm.
It shouldn't be with somebody that you despise to be around. Then you're in the addiction part on the opposite end of what love is. You're in it for the wrong reasons, right? When we're talking about romantic love, we're talking about the aspects of the feelings of the erotic attraction. Um, that's that beginning, everybody calls it puppy love, right? If that can continue and that love attraction still goes, you know, that's a good thing. But
Oh,
how
yeah.
do you keep it going, right?
Like I tell couples to make sure that you do the same thing years and years and years later as you did when you first met each other, so you don't forget. And a lot of times we get complacent and we forget, those same little things that we used to do when we were attracted to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just keep that up, and sometimes it doesn't have to be expensive, just little things. I love you, thank you, I appreciate you, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Little things, not much. I mean, like I'll take this one from sitting behind me. 26 years of being married. You notice how I hesitated a little bit. I think about that. Like, yeah, it's been 26 years of marriage, right? It's a long time. Nowadays, you hear somebody being married for years, and it's like, congrats. How do you guys do it? And it's one of those things. You have to keep your roots intact.
Yeah.
If you don't, you have communication. You like even mentioned, like you have to still kind of do those little odds and end things in regards to, what, let's just take a drive.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just go get, juice it up. Let's go get some coffee, or just little things.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I've been married for 26 years. We've been together for almost 30.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a long time.
It is.
There's days it's just, it's also giving that support. When one's down, you have to pick them up. And when the other one's, up, you can't pull them down. You have to be up there with them. So it's one of those things, it gives that give and take. That's what that attraction keeps going. And that romantic love keeps going as well. And then, but you have the culture variation of love though. And what I mean by that is that there's not all relationships, global perspective wise, drive off of that. A lot of the culture variations, it's like, well, you're my wife, you're going to listen to what I'm going to say, I don't care. So it's a different type of love. It's almost like if it's a little bit of a fearful love, fear induced romantic love, and cultivation, or the culture variation of love is like, okay, well, you're going to marry this person because I said so. Same thing, I don't know this person, first time I've seen them, I'm marrying them on the first day. What type of love is that? It's something that you got to grow into.
Yeah. It's like an arranged marriage, or
Yeah.
they have in some countries, or this new show they have now, Marriage at First Sight.
My husband loves the show. 90 Day Fiance,
Mm-hmm.
same thing. Yeah, it's one of those things, that's that culture variation. And the 90 Day Fiance, I chuckle and laugh because some of these women are looking at, married men from, like, one she's, and tell you, I do watch it with him just because that's that moral support, right? Have something to talk about. But it's also one of those situations, it's something that we do together. We sit here and maybe watch a show together, or we'll lay, watching the TV in bed or whatever before, we go to bed. But it's one of those situations. I mean, but you have a woman who's white, who's 52, marrying a Nigerian man who's in his 30s. You got a culture variation of love there, of what is expected. Um, she's not used to his culture, and he's like, she's not going to boss me around. So it's kind of funky to kind of watch, and it's like, no, your audience, when you go to Nigeria, like, you got to respect their culture, you got to follow the rules and all that aspects. So it's a little funky to kind of watch those, but it's kind of like one of those things they say, I'm in love. You know this guy for how long? So it's kind of like one of those things, and it's, as we've industrialized, the love has been tossed around so easily now, to where I think our younger generations don't really know the true meaning of that. Because it comes back to that, what do they see as a part of an attraction? What do they see as part of that romantic love? So it's really hard in regards to that aspect. So when we're looking at marriage and we're looking at the culture differences, what differences are here?
Right?
Yeah, right? What's the common pattern between marriages and between African Americans and whites? Do you guys know?
Say that one more time.
The marriage differences, the common patterns. Is it more of African American men marrying white women, or is it more white women marrying African American men?
I think it's kind of 50-50.
It is.
I say men versus the men.
It's more common for men versus men marrying white women. But when you're looking at it, it's also kind of one of those things. But why do we marry? What's the sole purpose? Like, I'm using Kanye West and Kim Kardashian, right? What do they have in common?
Both rich.
Them money.
Famous.
Money, right? They have similar characteristics, right? They have, when you marry somebody, you want somebody that has some of the same characteristics as you, by all means. You want to have that commonness, and that's what they call like a homogamy. And that homogamy is when the tendency of people with similar characteristics to marry one another. I mean, you see this, yes, he's African American, yes, she's white, but does she really look white?
No, she looked like my nieces.
Right? She's actually, I think she's part Russian, if I'm right, too. But technically, it's like one of those situations. I mean, I could sit here and ask you guys, do I look white? No. It's just one of those things, too, where I get, oh, you're Hispanic. No, I'm not. But it's also one of those things to where it's similar characteristics. The only reason why, like I said, my husband and I get along so well is we have common things. We have characteristics that are very similar. We have those common needs, that homogamy, in order to kind of make things exist and move forward. But you don't have anything. I mean, situations like I see these two, and I'm like, what possibly do you have in common besides money? They're, besides being a little weird. I don't know. A little off the rockers a little bit. I don't know.
And we only see him from the outside. We don't know, what goes on between their four walls. There's something apparently about him and about her that attracts, that's
one another.
Yeah.
And that's one thing we have to, I laugh, it's like, oh, keep up with the Kardashians and stuff like that. I'm like, there's a producer behind that wants you to see what they want you to see. The same thing with like the 90 Day Fiance and Married at First Sight. It's the same thing. The producers set up certain things so that way you see what the producer wants you to see. They want you to see the drama. They want you to see all the aspects, just like The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, and the new one that's on right now from the same producer, which is Listen to Your Heart.
Yeah.
There you go. It's one of those things, usually he watches it and I'm playing my Switch, to be quite honest. So it's one of those things to where it's kind of one of those boundaries, like, it, it's the social media, what pulls people in to see and watch. People like to see the drama. It takes the drama off of their life to focus it on somewhere else. So, and when you're looking at marriages between whites and African Americans, the race and ethnicities of husband and wives, white husband, African American wife is your orange. Kind of show you the difference. There is actually a big difference. And I've asked this with my students, which one is more accepting, socially wise?
Oh,
African American?
Hmm.
the-
And white husband and an African American wife, or African American husband with a white wife? Which one's more accepting?
The African American
American
husband,
male with a white wife.
or the
it
African
has-
American male side, or the African American female side?
I mean, that's one of those things that really depends on
Mhm.
the culture and traditions of that family.
True.
Right? It's depending on how it's raised. But when you look at it society wise, there's some racial prejudice,
Yeah.
discrimination that goes along with it all. I'm not going to hide the fact I hear it when I'm out in public sometimes, and you see the mixed culture races and stuff like that, and you get these old school, and I will put it out there, white guys or white women that are old school traditional, like, nope, you don't mix. Um, it's just one of those things to where it's frowned upon. And unfortunately, back in the day when my husband and I were even dating, we heard the same thing,
Mm.
because of the mixtures. A lot of people don't like to see the mixed, race and ethnicity. They don't believe in it. Now society has changed, it's more accepting, but even still, this is something that's still questioned upon. It's still talked about a lot. It's discriminated. Like I said, it's one of those things to where I don't know why everything else is accepted, but why is this not? So
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah. So when you're looking at the childbirth, the ideal, and I laugh at this, what is your ideal family size? For those of you who are not married and already have kids, what is your ideal family size? And keep in mind that when I was growing up, I was the only child, so I wanted this big family. 3? That's not bad. I have 3. That's all my body would allow me to do. Right?
Me too.
My body said, no, no more for you. You can't handle another one. But if my body said yes, I would probably end up with like 4 or 5 kids, to be quite honest. It was probably a good thing we ended up with only 3. But ideal family size. And I don't know if that's because I came from being an only child to wanting a big family, because I didn't have those siblings. I didn't have that interaction that I guess was looking for. But at the same time, I didn't get that sibling until I had my oldest son. They're the same age. They're 3 months apart from one another. When my dad remarried, he had another kid. So when I had my oldest, like I said, they're literally 3 months apart. She's older by 3 months. So his wife and I were pregnant at the same time. It's always great. But when you look at the childbirth, what is your ideal family size? And then the marital satisfaction after childbirth. So back in the 1970s, 76 areas, families wanted larger families, or 1960s, in that era, larger families, 3 or more kids was ideal. And I think back at my grandmother, who has 4 kids, that's ideal back then. Now it's 1, 0, maybe 2. A lot of families don't want more than that anymore.
I think it has to do too, like back in the day, the way of life, like you had more work out in the field and stuff like that. So you wanted kids to help out.
Mhm.
And now, like both parents tend to work so many hours, maybe they can't have another child because it's just too much work. At least that's like my situation. Like I want another kid, but my kids are with the babysitter most of the day instead of me. So why have another kid?
you know, and my daughter has two, you know, and she wanted four, and now she's going, maybe one more. She's kind of teeter-tottering it. Like she wants that boy, but she's like,
Yeah,
worth it?
that's me right now. I'm like,
Is it worth it? You know, so she's kind of like, she teeter-totters back and forth, you know. Like I said, the oldest one is going to be, she'll be 4 in November. The younger one will be 2 in December. So she's like, well, I kind of want to keep them close in age. And I'm like, okay, like, you know, whatever, it's your choice. It's one of those situations, but she's kind of like, you don't want to put her body through it all again. Um, you know, or, you know, missing out on school or job or whatever it might be, you know, but that's just why ideally, like, you know, you just said that one, maybe two, because the working environment now is so different and kids are spending more time in daycare. And unfortunately, there are a lot more single moms now that are raising the kids on their own. So it makes it even harder of a situation. So that's just why ideally they're just like, I'm good with one or I'm good with none.
Mm.
So, but like if you look at it, 1976, the ones that wanted only 2 kids, it was a low percentage. 2014, 2 kids, high percentage. Flip it around, 1976, people wanted 4 plus kids, not nowadays. But even, this is in 2014. Think about it now, 2020, things are more expensive.
Oh yeah.
Buying diapers, you know, box of diapers and generic brand. We're not talking name brand. Generic brands, you're spending, you know, over $20 for a box of diapers. You know, that lasts a month if you're lucky, maybe 2 weeks, you know, depending on how many diapers come in it. Costco's great for that if you're okay with generic. Um, so it's one of those situations to where, you know, as the economy changes and the more the inflation that we have, the smaller family sizes that people want. They don't want big families anymore. If you had a big family, if you had a family of 4, how much would it cost you to go into Disneyland?
Oh,
yeah, that too. You can't afford
Can't
$115
it.
go
ticket.
anywhere.
Not affordable.
Yeah, you know, like I said, if you think about it, what Disneyland tickets are anywhere from, if you catch it on a good day, $99. You catch it on a bad day, it's about 130. If
Yeah.
I'm right,
Oh,
just
yeah.
for one park. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that's not including. Okay, that's one ticket. Now you got to buy. Well, depending if you're 4 kids, now you got to buy. You know, a total of 6. You're dropping over 2 grand just to get through the gates.
That's crazy.
Quick math. That's not including parking. That's not including food. So they don't let you take anything in. So it's kind of, it gets to the point where it's like, okay, where's enough is enough. So we're actually on our way to designer babies, guys. So with the woman's eggs and you know, once the egg is fertilized with the sperm in a lab, in a lab, um, they create several embryos in regards to it. A single cell is removed from each embryo and then tested for biomarkers, which is associated with the female's green eyes and blonde hair aspects, right? That only embryo that has that biomarker will then be placed in the woman's womb to guarantee that woman would be guaranteed that designer baby that they wanted. Is that cool or not? What
No.
what morals did you just break?
Mhm. Yeah.
What norms did you just break, right?
Yeah.
You just broke all of the aspects of the way how we function as a society, right? Um, so this is on its way. This is something that if you have the old-fashioned saying, if you have the money, by all means you can kind of do this. But it's the same thing. If you think about it, I know they're doing research in regards to women who are actually already pregnant, with when they do their sonograms and stuff like that, and they find like if the child has MS or any type of other disabilities, they're trying to, or they're testing to remove that gene, or that defect out from the child before the child's even born as they're developing. So they're removing it from the DNA. So they are doing that. That's a kind of cool of a, if you really want to think about it. This is just plain
Bunny.
weird. And I was trying to think of a word that wouldn't get me in trouble. It's just weird. Um, my thing is that why would you want only one major part of genes? If you think about genes, you get 23 and 23 from each side, right?
Mhm.
You know, you get all these, but now you just removed probably about half of them. Okay, great. You got this biomarker in regards to this kid that you want, this ideal aspects of green eyes and blonde hair, and you know, okay, cool. What did you just do to that kid otherwise? You know, it's
Yeah.
kind of, you know, did you maybe cause a defect within the lifestyle? Did you just change the DNA for this kid for the future? Did you just take away half of whatever in regards to the aspects of culturally wise, or you know, the father, you know, did you take all the way of dad and only leave mom? You know,
Yeah.
genetic wise, you know, what did you just do? There's a lot there that's,
Yeah.
you know, that you just kind of split the
Uh,
paths of.
mhm. And when
Um,
you think about it too, a lot of these children that, okay, they're genetically designed, okay, with the features that you want. But suppose, have you ever thought about, the ones that have mental disabilities and, things of that nature? And when they grow up and have all these other kind of thoughts and things of that nature, you don't know what you're messing with when you do something like this.
yeah, there was some other research that was going on. I think there was 7 babies. I know we were just talking about this, so I want to say a few months ago. There were 7 babies that were doing research in China that were, I don't want to say infected with it, but they were trying to adjust their genetic genes to where they are immune to the HIV virus, the AIDS virus.
Hmm.
These kids are now immune, can't catch it, can't receive it, can't do anything. So when it kind of, mind you, there's 7 kids, their names have not been released, no one knows where they're at. But it's at the same time, it's like, okay, when they get older, with them having this recessive gene now and within their systems, what is that going to do for their offsprings?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
if you think about it, it almost makes it to the point to where what other altercations did they make to these kids to where they are immune to? What
Hmm.
other diseases are they immune to now? Um, so kind of almost makes them like a superhuman in that aspects. And what is their offspring now going to do? So that's kind of almost the same thing as this, as a designer baby type aspects. Just the opposite way of not really picking out what like color eyes and hair that I'm going to make sure I'm going to get, but this is like making sure that they never get sick. It's the same aspects. So it's creepy and scary all in the same breath.
Oh, yes.
But you know, this is where our the like what? It's one of those situations to where, but this is where our biology, this is where our research, this is where it's going. You know, so it's one of those situations to where it's like, okay, you know, um, how much further can we really go with it? So when we're looking at child rearing, when it comes to a single father with custody of his children, is unique role conflicts, right? Just what is a mother and a dad kind of role, right? You see this dad, he's with a very young child. Cool, great. They have a great loving bond relationship. What happens when she turns to be a teenager and he's a single
Distances.
dad? Can he relate to her?
Nope.
Why not?
Mhm.
The change.
Hormonal change, right?
Mhm. He can, but it's good if he has sisters or or good lady friends or whatever that can relate to her, because like I always said, it takes a village to raise a child, you
It
know,
does.
and as long as there are some positive women in her life, if her biological mother is not there, they can fill the void and help them out, when it comes to those type of things.
Absolutely. But it's also one of those situations to where that's the reason why a lot of men tend to remarry faster.
Mhm.
um, when it comes down to it, because they have a hard time rearing their children, especially if they are the custodial parent and the child lives with them. I mean, you know, typical men, they work 40 plus hours a week. They have to depend on their family members or daycare or whatever the means may be. But that's just why a lot of times if they got divorced, they are the first to remarry because if they have the custodial aspects. Whereas women tend to not remarry so quickly. Um, it's just one of those things that it's a balance in regards to it because you know don't ask me why. It's just one of those situations that happens. Sometimes men don't like to be alone. Some of them are very well off and perfectly fine, but that's just it's the statistics have shown that men tend to remarry faster than women do when they have the custodial rights of their kids. So married couples and single mothers, single fathers daycare, we'll get into all of this aspects right now. So when we're looking at married couples and single mothers and single fathers daycare nannies, social class, and the helicopter parenting, that's always the greatest, by the way. When you look at it, it's unique, I'll tell you that much. Who takes care of the babies while their mothers are at work? As you can see, married couples, it's kind of a variety of issues that are going around. There's a high percentage of dad, grandparents, center based, whether if the center base is daycare, mom, wherever it might be. Mother's care for a child is about 4%. This is on a married couple aspects. When you're looking at a single mom aspects, it's kind of one of those things to where you can kind of see the shift even more. Grandparents increase, grandparents are expected to take more. The center base, like the daycare, preschools and nurseries and stuff like that, remains the same. But if you notice, the other relatives expand out, the other decreases, father decreases. So it's kind of one of those things to where, it's the aspects, if the mom is the one that's working, the mom is the one that's kind of, like we just mentioned, the mom is the one that has to work all the time, and the kids end up, like I said, either grandparents or daycare or school or wherever it may be, or even school and then after school care. So it really depends in regards to it. So you can kind of see the child rearing aspects is, who takes care of who. When it comes to daycare and primary socialization for millions of kids, it's not just a single out anybody, but if you think about it, my kids went to daycare. I actually even had my, grandmother watch my kids, so I have both aspects. I wanted my kids to socialize with other kids, but at the same time, I'm like, I can't afford 5 days a week either. It was expensive. Back even when my kids were little, it's even worse now. But it's one of those things, daycare has become that primary socialization. So where is a lot of the behavior, a lot of the social aspects kids are learning everything from?
Daycare.
Daycare, right? From either the daycare teacher or the preschool teacher or kindergarten, whoever it may be, right? But if you think about this, your individual child that's in this situation, and you're like, where did you learn that from? Think of the 100 kids that they're around throughout the day,
Mhm.
and where they're learning it all from. So, but as times progress on and the more that we industrialize, kids end up in daycare more and more and more. It's just the way how it is. Um, Even my grandgirls go to get daycare for at least 4 hours when everything was still going smoothly. My grandgirls would go to daycare, 5 days a week, 4 hours a day, just to get them the socialization. But at the same time, my daughter and son-in-law are in school, so and I work. I can't always be home, but I did what I could, what I can.
Mhm.
So when we're looking at family transitioning to adulthood and widowhood and all that aspects, um, when we're looking at transitional to adulthood, what is adulthood? When is adulthood?
18?
19.
18.
Sure. You think so?
Not by law. I mean, by law, but
If you
25?
30, let's be realistic. I got some 28s that are still living at home. um, Technically, the average age of transitional to adulthood now of kids still living at home is 30. I'm not joking. It's one of those situations to where it's the new transitional age. economy, I mean, it sucks the life out of you. I mean, no kid at the age of 18 could graduate high school and go live on their own. Not unless if they're going to go live in a dorm. And even at that, are they living alone?
No.
No, they're living with how many other kids, running amok. But it's also one of those situations, it's that traditional adulthood. Technically, 17, 18, 19, you're expected to be an adult. You're expected to act like an adult. You're expected to make adult decisions. I'm sorry, I can tell you right here, right now, my kids, when they were 17, 18, and 19, were not ready to make adult decisions. My oldest joined the military when he was 21. It was just one of those things to where it was like, okay, something's got to give here. But it's one of those situations to where, because individuals need more education and it's harder to find jobs, and without an education or without some type of a certificate or some type of a knowledge behind it, it takes them longer to get on their feet. So it's one of those situations to where, like I said, they end up living more, or their boyfriends end up, they end up living with their boyfriends, or the boyfriends end up living with their girlfriend. You end up with cohabitations because you need both incomes to kind of work together. But even at that, you're still looking at somebody that's in their mid to late 20s before they're out on their own. And so when they're talking about widowhood, women are more likely than men to become widows. It's just kind of one of those situations that tends to happen. There's two reasons. On average, women live longer than men, and they usually marry men older than they are. Those are your two reasons for widowhood aspects in regards to that. This one behind me is 2 years older than me, so he's older. So I tease him every now and again. But when we're looking at also, there was another one that was in there called helicopter parenting. There's no slide for it, so I'm going to go ahead and explain what it is. Think about having a household, right? Mom's in the house with the kids all the time, dad's away, right? But when dad comes back home, mom then goes away. Those are great parenting skills, right? But it's called helicopter parenting. And what it is that they're kind of separated, but they don't want to give the kids the illusion that they are separated, to try to keep their parenting skills intact, to give the presence of, and I've seen this in action and it doesn't work, which is why I'm kind of like, haha. But the parents think it works, and that's great, but it's called helicopter parenting. Like I said, one parent stays home, runs the house, makes sure that everything goes as well. When the other one comes back in, the other one goes out, and keeps it still functioning and flowing just like as normal, with no disruptions, no anything like that. It works, at the same time making the kids a little bit more dependent, in regards to understanding what's going on, because a lot of times, everybody always says, oh, stay together for the kids. That's not the case. If you're constantly arguing and fighting, and what is that giving to the kid aspects? What are the kids hear? They're not hearing that romantic love or that love addiction. They're hearing hatred all the time. So it's kind of one of those situations to where that old saying, oh, it's best to stay together for the kids. No, that's usually why they came up with helicopter parenting aspects, to where at least you're living a civil life and kind of having the kids build that dependence up, in regards to fully understanding before you actually just completely separate your ties. Where am I at on time, guys? I'm right about there, huh? I'm not going to get into the diversities of families yet. As you can see, there is a long list there. Do you guys have any questions so far?
No,
No, that's a good
we're
lesson.
good.
Interesting, right?
Yeah.
Let me do this real quick.